It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley as we begin a Tuesday. Gary, how are you?
Well, I'm trying to think what went faster over the weekend.
Yeah.
Was it Jerry driving me in his Porsche? We had a debate on what's the correct pronunciation of that over the weekend. Was that faster or the Libertarian Party in the news?
I thought to myself, first of all, why was he there? Number two, not Jerry, Trump. Right. And second of all, is anybody paying attention as to what has happened to the Libertarian Party in the last, how long has it been now since they made that turn? 10 years? I mean, we'll just say in recent years, the Libertarian Party, so Trump being heckled at the Libertarian thing, I thought to myself, he should be heckling them.
well, he actually did.
Well, I guess he did in his own way.
Yeah, he did when he said, "Well, look,
he's heckling you.
If you want to continue losing, then don't nominate me." I'm paraphrasing it, but that's what he said.
That's basically it. Because the Libertarian Party has taken the party itself, not libertarianism. We want to be clear.
Yes.
It has gone away from libertarian ideas, and that's just the way it is. Now, we can look at the GOP, and for far too long, they've been moving further and further away from conservative ideas. But you and I address that every night. That seems like a given to our audience that we've already covered that. But that's. I think number one, I think it's Porsche. We always grew up saying Porsche. So in the 70s, as a kid, I wasn't even old enough to drive yet, but I've always wanted a Porsche 911. And funny, I saw one on the way here.
That's what he has.
Yeah, and I've looked at them before. I've gone on a couple of test drives, and I just thought to myself, I'm only going to get myself in trouble. And I believe it's Porsche. I don't know. But you know who would know? Jerry Seinfeld. He owns like 4 million of them or something like that.
Well, it wasn't Jerry Seinfeld driving me around.
No, it was not. No.
But no, all in all, great weekend. We had some nasty weather here, and in fact, I was last night. Just a small cell, but it dropped major hail in my city that missed us. But I know a couple of people I know in where I live, and within probably 5 miles. I mean, they were, when I woke up, I saw their posts, need a new roof. And all I heard was like every 15 seconds. The thing is, when you have the metal gutters, if the hail is bad. And
it gets loud. Yeah, it's really loud.
It gets so loud. And all I had was like every 15 seconds you could hear like a pea-sized piece of hail hit a gutter. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm fine if that's all I'm hearing. And then we had the tornado. There were a number of tornadoes in Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, across the Midwest.
So we were scheduled to actually have dinner with some family that night, which would have put us right there at the southern end of Cook County, Texas, and just north of Denton County, Texas. For those truck drivers out there, this would be I-35. You know it very well, I-35. That runs basically between Dallas and Fort Worth, that stretch between Dallas and Fort Worth from Denton, Texas, all the way up to, through Oklahoma and through the rest of the country. But in that stretch there, just north of Denton, it was tragic hearing about the death of children and adults, and there's this small truck stop that is there. I know it well. I've gone by it, I don't know how many times. And in fact, I went by it the next morning. I actually drove by it the next morning and was able to survey some of the damage, which was, everything in that truck stop, everything was just gone. But people coming off of, basically pulling off of the freeway, it's dark. When it's dark, you don't know what's going on. You know that it's something bad and you need to seek shelter. And so right there in that stretch, there really isn't much else. It's an interchange with another road, and it's kind of on that interchange. So you would come off of the road and then go around, go under the underpass, and then and on the other side of that underpass, on the east side of I-35 sits what used to be that truck stop, and also an RV park. It's a very small RV park, but going by it the next morning, your heart sank knowing of the lost lives as a result of that storm and others, as you mentioned. And looking at the RVs, which I own one. They're it's basically sheet metal and some plastic. They're not meant to withstand anything. And a couple of them were just flattened like you would flatten a box before you put it in the recycling bin.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, and then when you see the building, or what used to be the building, the frame of that building. And it's been all over the national news. It was all over the national news over the weekend. But when you see it close up.
Did you see the guy that took the video inside there when it was hitting?
Yeah.
Man, was, you couldn't see much, but it's what you heard. You could hear the screaming. Nobody was killed inside there, though. I know people were injured, but I don't believe anybody inside was killed. But I was watching everybody. We're old, so everybody goes to sleep early. But I was on my phone, laying in bed, in Florida, just watching that. And I think it was the Texas Storm Watchers YouTube site, and they were like, "This thing is heading right to I-35 and right to this travel center." And they knew the travel center.
Yeah,
they're like, "It's heading right there. It's heading right there."
Yeah.
Thing is, though, you don't know. This is one thing that you always talk about, that we've talked about before, when a tornado is coming, your way in the dark. You don't know what to do. And if it's daylight, daylight, I'm gonna take a run for it if I know it's heading for my neighborhood,
right?
Because I can see it, but you don't know where it is. You can't see anything at night. That's the terror.
It really is, and so many people traveling on a weekend that you're looking to take a mini vacation, or maybe you're taking your vacation around Memorial Day. But so many people traveling that may not be familiar. Maybe they don't live in Tornado Alley and they're not familiar. But nobody is, in the dark. You can't be familiar. And unless you've got your settings on your phone, it's always important to keep those settings to where you can hear them. I know it's annoying if you're sitting there and then all of a sudden it goes off. We had that happen to us a couple of weeks ago because it is tornado season. And you don't know where to go. I think about the Joplin tornado in 2011, and some friends of mine worked at a Speedco. A Speedco, for those that don't know, is a quick oil change place for big rigs. And they have, of course, the underground bays, right? Like all the oil change places. So they were able to go downstairs. I immediately thought of the
Twister.
When they're in the town where her mom lives, and is it her mom or his mom?
No, they were this where they were underground was the place at the drive-in.
Okay, that's right.
And,
it was
and
a
then
different town. Yes.
Right, it hit there, and then it was going towards where the mother lived. Right.
Yeah, towards the mom's house. And then I think about them getting down there, which is honestly, if there is a way for you to get underground, I mean, the storm shelter is key. We just sold one of the homes that belonged to a family member, and it has a storm shelter. And the storm shelter was one of the first things that sold that house because it's in a town that experienced an EF5 in 1979, and everyone is always aware of what's going on with the weather this time of year, and so having a storm shelter is key to survival and safety. My wife and I, in our first home, we had one. We had to get in it one night. Tornado was right there on the street next to ours. You could hear it, and yes, it sounds like a freight train. I remember being at my parents' house, so this goes back several years, I think 2017, 2018. Kevin Selly, who used to be one of our meteorologists here on Red Eye, was meteorologist in the town where my parents live, and doing such a great job at the tornado coverage. And I thank goodness that I was there, because a tornado came by their house. It was less than a half mile from where they live. So we got into the closet and the whole thing. We come out, and then the tornado sirens go off again. This is one of the things that we talked about with the Oklahoma tornadoes recently. And that is the effect of, all right, the sirens are going off, and then you think it passes, and then the sirens go off again, and you're wondering, okay, is that a new warning? Is that and it was a new warning. And I walk out in the cul-de-sac, middle of the cul-de-sac where my parents live, and I'm like, I don't see anything, and I look up, and there it is. It hasn't touched the ground yet. It's straight over me. Ran back inside, and thank goodness we survived that. I think it went through a field in the adjacent Air Force Base where my parents live. And then I had to go home. I had to drive home. And I didn't tell my parents this, and they didn't really. I think my dad knew it. My mom didn't really put it together, because my mom would have been screaming at me, "You're not going anywhere." But I had to get home. And I was on the road. I'm following the storm to Dallas, basically. And I see something, and I'm out in a very rural area, and it's getting close. It's at this point, the sun is almost set, and I see it, and it's in this field to my right, and it comes across the Highway 287 in Texas, goes right perpendicular to how I was traveling, goes right across the highway, and I don't know how to. I don't think there is any kind of way you're supposed to react other than, oh my gosh, I was just stunned by this tornado. And thank goodness there was no damage that I saw to any of the structures. I didn't hear of any damage to structures. I didn't receive any damage to my vehicle. I was far enough away from it, but it looks like it's right there, and it's just so sad when you hear about those deaths of these tornadoes, and then seeing more storms hit. One of the things that you and I have seen over the years, living in, I've grown up in Tornado Alley, but living with this and being in the media and seeing so much of it up close, is the fact that when it starts to get warmer, that part of May, June, where it really starts to get warmer and you have the right conditions, that heat is what will set it off, and make it especially dangerous quite often. And, I can't stress this enough. Do everything you can. Again, I know it's annoying because sometimes the weather alerts will go off for a thunderstorm watch, and you think to yourself, "Oh, I don't want it going off every time there's just a thunderstorm watch or a tornado watch." A watch is its conditions are right. A warning is it's happening now, but it's something that you really kind of have to put up with, and you shouldn't. If you get a weather radio, if you've got your settings on your phone, you think about it. Back in the day, you had to have a weather radio. And now you can set your phone up to where those EAS alerts can come across, those weather alerts can come across. But it's important that you do that. I think of truck drivers who live on the road, and you're in basically what is equivalent to an RV. I mean, in terms of what they're meant to withstand. And so that way, if you're asleep out in the parking lot of a truck stop, you give yourself time, quite hopefully, that you can get in and get to safety. But our thoughts and prayers with all the families who lost souls and those who may be looking to rebuild.
It was yesterday morning when I woke up, and I was up by like 5:30 in the morning. The temperature was 78 with 94% humidity.
Yeah.
I couldn't look out my windows. All of my windows were completely fogged up.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, we could have some storms today. The first thing that hit my mind, and we did around the area, some localized storms, no tornadoes from what I know. There was no rotation. But
didn't see any.
Real heavy thunderstorms and lots of hail.
Yeah.
And
the thing about them now is that they pop up pretty quickly, and not everybody gets them. So you may think, oh, it looks great, it's fine, and then all of a sudden things change on a dime, and that's kind of what happened over the weekend.
This happened last night. When I went to sleep, the thunderstorms were right over Dallas, probably about 10 miles from me, and then another, very small cell developed just north and came right down right over us. But a lot of people, as I was telling you, a lot of people in my town, just on social media, got to get a new roof. I'm like, whew, I must have just escaped that by a couple of miles.
Yeah.
866-90 Red Eye.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. Logging miles during the hot summer months can put a serious strain on you and your truck's health. Did you know pollutants and allergens in the air outside can enter your cab through the HVAC system without you even cracking a window? That's why it's important to check those cabin air filters. Inhaling dirty and polluted air can cause distress if you suffer from allergies or a respiratory illness. Not to mention the distraction dirty cabin air filters can cause by blocking proper airflow to your AC system when you need it most.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Wow, what a weekend. We got so much to talk about. First off, the closing arguments in the Trump trial coming up, what to expect on that this week. This out. Some employers are reluctant to hire college grads who attended pro-Palestinian protest. Yeah, hiring a person who was pro-terrorist might not be able to have the social skills that you want in your workplace. We'll get to that. Also, you heard of quiet quitting. Mm-hmm. How about busy bragging? Something new in the workplace, and also coming up on the bottom of the hour, a special treat. I mean, a very special treat.
I would busy brag, but I've got too many things going on. So this is that's a problem. It's if I say we take a 1-year break from social media. Everybody get out to the real life. Everybody go out and do something that's difficult. Go out and, well, just start by going outside.
Get a job.
Get a job. There's so much of and I really do believe it's now some kind of, it's an obsession mixed with competition of these people who just, the virtue signaling to the point that, I mean, you have these radicals now that are looking to display their hatred and prove that they're more hateful than the next person. Remember when it used to be, I care more than you care? Now it's, well, I hate more than you hate. And that's where the radicals have gone. Now, it makes it especially entertaining at times. But it's not. It absolutely is not fun to watch all the time. And it just seems like it's nonstop these days.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. You know, one of the things that you and I have been talking about, Eric, is the fact that it seems like, if, for example, the White House press corps is attempting to put Karine Jean-Pierre on the defensive, and the White House, you hear harder questions being asked. I saw, was it Face the Nation, where Buttigieg was on, and the host, basically told him, people, played Trump saying people don't want EVs, and she said, that's accurate. He goes, no, it's not. She goes, yes, it is. Just the pushback itself of Buttigieg for something like that is just amazing. And then this was one of the highlights of my weekend. And this was done by the Comedy Central, The Daily Show. And they did this skit that ripped Kamala Harris and her word salads. I mean, this is as brutal as it gets, and it's just so humorous. And what it is it's a little thing about, her word salads and where it comes from, which is her, and this is all a parody, her holistic speech advisor.
Yeah.
And so here it is, just a little bit of this. This is from The Daily Show, and this is important because they're liberal. Mm-hmm. But here you go. All right.
Talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time.
Seems like maybe it's a small issue, it's a big issue. You need to get to go and need to be able to get where you need to go to do the work and get home.
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day. Every day it is time for us to agree that
she's come so far since our first session. My name is Dahlia Rose Hibiscus, and I am Vice President Kamala Harris's Holistic Thought Advisor. What is a Holistic Thought Advisor? Well, it's holistic, yes, and I am advising. And what do we mean when we say that? It means that I am the one by whom the thoughts are being advised from a place of advisement, and then once advised, communicated holistically.
What?
Mm-hmm, you get it. I lead the Vice President on not so much sentences as idea voyages.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you.
It's a process I call speaking without thinking. It's not about the destination of the thought. It's about the journey and how many words you use to describe the journey.
That's on top of everything else that we know and don't know yet, based on what we've just been able to see. And because we've seen it or not doesn't mean it hasn't happened.
Whenever the Vice President gets a speech from her staff, the first thing I do is cut out all the words individually, and then I take those words to my word cave.
And this is great because now this is the video portion of it where she's actually in like a cave. So
yeah,
there's just some music here for a couple of moments. So let's continue it because it's just hilarious.
That's where I wait to learn what order the universe wants them to be in.
Oh, my God.
Words have vibrations. The feeling they give you is so much more powerful than what they mean.
We have the ability to see what can be, unburdened by what has been, and then to make the possible actually happen.
I hear the counter arguments all the time. People should be able to understand what their leaders are saying when they talk. But I prefer to leave Kamala's thoughts open to interpretation, like a work of modern art that you look at and go, I wonder what that was all about.
See the moment in time in which we exist and are present, and to be able to contextualize it, to understand where we exist in the history and in the moment as it relates not only to the past but the future.
It really is such a career highlight to be working with someone with such an advanced mind space as the vice president. I also sell essential oils on Facebook Marketplace.
That was the perfect ending. That's what I love.
Oh, I'm telling you, we played it over the weekend for some of my friends in Florida, and had a discussion with a couple of people about, we always talk about, how one of the mistakes that people make is we believe we don't understand the other side at times because we don't understand their thought process. And we've come to the realization that all people don't think alike. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons we got there is the left always saying that every position that we would hold would be racist. And we're like, you can't make that case. Why would you do that? And then we came to the realization that they're the party of identity politics. They're the ones that are actually the racists. They're the ones that judge people by groups and not as individuals. And so then it made sense to us because we went, all right, they're just projecting out how they think. They're racist, so they believe you are, because we sort of believe that everybody sort of thinks the same way and we don't. And then it came up about Kamala Harris. How the hell do you get to the point of her? Remember, she was Attorney General of California.
Yeah.
And you think about how she speaks, and you just have to ask yourself, where the hell does that come from?
When we often venture into the ideas of ideas,
yeah.
I sometimes, which is not always, will think of the thoughts that people think and how they think them. See, this is what happens. You listen to it for too long, it will steal your critical thinking abilities.
Well, I have to ask the question, nobody has ever delved into this.
Mm-hmm.
Is she ad-libbing, or is that actually on the teleprompter?
We've been asking that from the beginning. Is somebody writing this? Because if they're writing it, that means multiple people actually have gone over it multiple times. They've rehearsed it. They've edited. Is she doing the editing? Is she writing it? I don't. Did they immediately know after they won? That they were. So here it is, the morning of January 21st of 2021. And they're saying, oh, that's right. She's vice president. Let her know she doesn't have a speechwriter. Let her know she doesn't have a staff. Just her and her husband. They can work it out. I don't, because think about the history as we often historically think of history.
When we think of
history. And it's like harking. I don't even know what harking means, but we hark back. You and I have been doing this for a long time. Any American has been following, if you've been alive for any amount of time, political speeches. Any political speech. The big ones, the small ones. The ribbon cuttings, and then the larger ones that may be, I don't know, a presidential campaign announcement or something else.
The ones that are larger.
Yeah, the larger, which tend to be bigger, greater in scope.
With more people.
Well, not always. We try to tell them. But here's the thing is that I would think finding speechwriters in D.C. would be as easy as finding a waiter or server, now that we call them servers, in Hollywood.
I was going to say songwriters in Nashville.
No, perfect. Which would be the equivalent of a waiter in Hollywood. It's not a waiter, call him an actor. Because they're all actors. And so I think to myself, it should be that easy. You should be able to walk up anywhere in D.C. and say, all right, if you know a speechwriter, tell them to call me. And how it gets to this point, I will never know. Where it's not once. It's not like a teleprompter broke.
No, this is
and
all
then,
the time.
she was on her own to try and recover, which, by the way, you should be able to recover by the time you become, vice president. You should be able to talk. We talk about this all the time in talking of what we talk about.
When we talk
It's
about
contagious.
what we talk about.
It's contagious.
I know.
and as we talk about
it's contagious. It's contagious that it goes back and forth between both of us and then everybody else in the room.
And then everyone else is affected like some kind of contagious contagion. And you should have your core values set in front of you and have no problem talking about them at any moment. We've talked about debates. Ramaswamy is one of those who, during the primary season, for the most part, he was able to boom, 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 convey ideas, and he can talk about it on the fly. He doesn't need a teleprompter. He can debate. Let's see here. We could talk about Governor DeSantis. We can talk about Governor Huckabee Sanders. We can talk about a number of individuals who have seemingly never had an issue answering a question or debating a point. And there are those who seemingly have no issue debating points and answering questions, but still they can't get the job done. But we're not going to talk about Chris Christie in this segment.
Ooh. Let me be Horseshack here.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Carter.
Mm-hmm.
Is it because when, number one, you don't believe in anything except power and control, but you have to give speeches about where you stand, and you're waiting to see what public opinion is before you take an opinion on anything because all you care about is power and control? And when you also understand, as second in command of the executive branch and therefore of your party, that what you actually do believe, this would be a second and or point, what you actually do believe the public doesn't agree with, and so you can't touch that, and so you just get involved in some type of circular logic that you keep just throwing it out, and so it just becomes habit that I'm going to state the obvious in a circular logic point
because you don't know where to go, because you don't adhere to ideas. Our audience, our long-term listeners especially, might get a little bit tired of hearing things that we've talked about over and over again because, as we've mentioned, the people come and go, the ideas remain, and so we're going to repeat things. But you should never have a problem finding your core beliefs in that moment. It's called conviction. But if you have none, then you're going to find nothing. And that's what you hear from her.
And nothing from nothing means
nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh, she's vice president.
866-90 Red Eye.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara. All right, the Trump trial goes to closing arguments later on today, unless the judge comes out with a directed verdict. Really interesting. I think we mentioned this. Well, I'm not sure. It seems like we haven't been on the air. It was just a 3-day weekend. It seems like I haven't been on the air in about 2 years. I don't know why, but the weekend seemed very, very long, which is always great.
It did, yeah.
But we will. I forgot where I was going with that.
The judge's
trial.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. The judge's trial and whether it be a directed verdict got a lot of publicity over the weekend. I don't think he will do it. I
don't have any confidence at all that he's going to do it.
No.
If he does do it, it's going to shock me a little bit based on his behavior up until now. I don't think he's going to do it. If he wants to save his legacy, if that's his concern, then, by the way, if he wants to do justice, forget about the people involved, but if he wants to actually do justice, he should do it. But I don't think he's going to do it.
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Well, the Trump trial resumes today. Closing arguments supposed to take place. Just reading, this is Byron York, Washington Examiner. Judgment Week, how prosecutors will use the other crime against Trump. This is the thing you just shake your head at. On Tuesday, a jury in Manhattan will hear closing arguments. Local prosecutors allege Trump committed bookkeeping offenses as part of a conspiracy to corrupt the 2016 presidential election. The former president's specific crime, prosecutors say, was labeling a non-disclosure agreement negotiated by his lawyer as a legal expense in Trump Organization books. But bookkeeping offenses, even when done by Trump, are misdemeanors in New York, so prosecutors sought to raise the seriousness of the charge by alleging an additional crime. They haven't said so precisely, but in court papers, they had offered a theory in which Trump, in addition to the bookkeeping, violated a New York state election law, barring the conspiracy to promote or prevent election by unlawful means. That is also a misdemeanor. But Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg argues that the two misdemeanors, when taken together, add up to 34 felony charges and a maximum sentence of 136 years in prison for Trump. Such is the state of the justice system in New York. It doesn't take a brilliant legal mind to see that it all depends Trump's future in the hopes of the Democrats who seek to jail him and cripple his presidential candidacy. It all depends on that second misdemeanor, which attorneys usually refer to as the object crime. So it is not surprising that there has been a furious debate between the two sides about how Judge Merchan will instruct the jury to consider the object crime when they decide Trump's fate. This here from Jonathan Turley, why the case against Trump should end in not guilty. Trump's lawyers are defending a former president who was charged under a state misdemeanor which died years ago under the statute of limitations. It was then zapped back into life in the form of roughly 36 felonies claiming that bookkeeping violations, allegedly hiding payments to Stormy Daniel to ensure her silence about a supposed affair with Trump, were committed to hide another crime. But what is that second crime? By the way, the first crime isn't a crime, but that's not the point. They're trying to say, what is the second crime that takes you to the felony? Even liberal legal analysts admitted they could not figure out what was being alleged in Bragg's indictment. Now, after weeks of trial, the situation has changed little. Originally, Bragg referred to 4 possible crimes, though is now claiming 3, a tax violation or either a state or federal campaign finance violation. The last crime is particularly controversial because Bragg has no authority to enforce federal law, and the Justice Department declined any criminal charges. The Federal Elections Commissions did not even find grounds for a civil fine. Judge Merchant has ruled that the jury does not have to agree on what that crime is. The jury could split into 3 groups of 4 on which of the 3 crimes were being concealed, and Merchant could still treat that as a unanimous verdict. Jeez. The jury has been given little information of substance on these crimes, and Merchant has denied a legal expert who could have shown that there was no federal election violation. The case should have been dismissed for lack of evidence of a crime. The jury will be reminded that the burden is on the government, not the defense. Well, hopefully they will be.
Yeah, we don't know that.
It's the craziest thing, and you when you look at the brainwashing, think. Let me. This would be a question. Does the liberal legal profession really believe that a man saying that they're a woman? Do they actually believe that that's true legally and should be defended legally? Or do they know, and I'm using that as an example to jump to this. Do they really believe that the law can be manipulated against anybody like this? And in their obvious manipulation of the law and charging things that aren't crimes, do they really think that this is like a math problem and they've come up with a new form of math or law which can hold water? Or do they know that it's BS and will be overturned? And I think that's a legitimate question, because the left in this country will defend things that are indefensible, but what liberals actually and Democrats actually believe. So if they truly believe through the brainwashing of the legal system in the elite colleges in this country, that yes, it's okay, you can, yes, you should defend transgender rights to go up against women. If they believe that they can take something like Title IX and completely pervert it to what it never intended to be, do they really believe they're on the right side legally?
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, because we were talking about Kamala Harris, the vice president, last hour, and played the Daily Show bit, which was very funny. And we, as you break it down, you said, look, it's important to remember she was once the Attorney General of the state of California. And then you apply that to where Bragg is going and the judges here. Are we in this DEI-esque mode of the legal setting? Tell me what would be more effective. Think about this. When you attach great emotion, when you want something to be the next civil rights movement, right? That's that you try and attach this same emotion as the actual civil rights movement in this country. And you and I have been saying for a long time, they want all these things to be civil rights, the new civil rights era. And you do that because you're trying to bring about public support for that. So it's actually relevant to bring in the entire thing on the liberal transgender movement and how big that's been on the left. And why is that? Well, when you get to that, and then you get to, you also apply the fact that they believe your religion is filled with hate, so again, eroding away, chipping away at all of these rights, at your freedom of religion, at a number of things, just as Sotomayor was caught on a hot mic saying, no, it is our job. Essentially, she was saying it's our job to legislate from the bench. She's not the first liberal to believe that. We all know that. And you start changing the very foundation of a nation. You start undoing the Constitution slowly. And if we're at a point where a former president can be charged in this way, this wasn't a case of we found Donald Trump selling all of the nation's secrets to Russia. We found him guilty of, in this case, you found him guilty of nothing, a non-disclosure agreement, and the key word there being agreement. It requires that two parties sign it, that they actually come together and both are okay with it, and it's well within contract law. And when you can pull things out of nothingness and then apply them in order to legally attack and bring down the political opposition, that's just the beginning. If you're one of these who doesn't care about Trump, if you're one of these, whether you're a never Trumper or a liberal or anywhere in between, and you're never going to vote for Trump and you don't care what happens to him, you should be caring about what's happening to him right now, because this is not about him. It's about the rule of law in a nation of laws. It is about law and order that the left has been trying to dismantle for years. Defund the police. All of this is related and in the same arena of chipping away and eventually dismantling the U.S. Constitution. You can't argue anything that I just said. And that's why I fully expect Mershon to come out and say, nope, going to send it to the jury. I have no idea what the jury instructions look like. But honestly, if you were to have asked me in the beginning of all this, what do you think this trial is going to look like? I couldn't have come up with what we've seen so far. I don't think any Hollywood writer, I don't think people doing LSD could have come up. Do the kids still do LSD? I don't know. I don't think anyone who would be out of their mind could come up with this kind of craziness. So I don't know what the instructions to the jury are going to be, but I'm fully confident he is going to give them something. It's going to be nothing, technically. It's going to be I don't know. I don't know what it looks like. I have no idea. But it will not, absolutely not, be based on law. And that is, to me, those are where the real crimes are.
Well, funny thing is, I was reading Byron York, and he was writing that, what they're saying is, there's if he's convicted, there's very little precedent to overturn. Well, there's no precedent to convict somebody of a felony when there's no felony. I mean, it's just
right, exactly.
It's just that's the point. That, of course, there's no precedent because they're trying to convict him of something that isn't a crime.
Right.
There's no crime here. They can't even identify a crime. It's like, well, there's a possible crime, so the jury, here's 4 possible generic crimes without actually going to the law that we're telling you consist of 34 felonies that we can't identify in the law that should put him in jail for 136 years, that we can't tell you what the crime is, but you pick the crime in musical chairs pick the generic crime that you see. I've never seen, I mean, it's just, this is going to get blown out, but they don't care. But they've been wrong so far. They believe that this was going to turn the people against Trump, and it's done just the opposite. And you and I have said we're in completely uncharted territory. If Trump is found guilty, it may have the complete opposite effect.
It's going to be global news. Here's the problem Mershon has. If he cares about anything about how this is going to affect the election, and I suspect that he does, and it's been written over and over again, and we've talked about it, how you create a martyr in Trump if Trump is found guilty by a jury. But here's how it plays out logistically, is that there are many people that are looking at it going, oh, yeah, that trial with that whole stripper thing, yeah. And there are people around the world that are kind of aware of it. If Donald Trump is found guilty, if he goes to jail, especially over this whole thing, the entire world will take notice. And that's something that Mershon, I don't know if he cares about it or not, but he should, because it's going to be based on nothing. And the world will be looking at us going, all of our allies, the United States is now a banana republic.
Here's what Byron York put from the Trump prosecutor is saying. The other crime, well, it need not have been committed for Trump to be convicted, just intended. And by the way, it doesn't have to be a crime. 2 misdemeanors plus a civil elections violation, and Viola, 34 felonies, maximum 136 years in prison. This is so whacked out. Like I said, this is prosecution on acid.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. It has no place in a courtroom. None.
No, doesn't.
None.
And no one, you don't even see anybody in the left that can understand this. No one. They'll throw out 34 felonies. No one. I haven't seen one liberal legal analyst. Was there one out there? I'm trying to think. Maybe there was one, but it didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Who? Oh, no, I'm sorry. It wasn't. I was thinking of Comey.
Okay.
Comey, who said the case is much stronger. If you want to know that Comey is a political hack who didn't give a damn about the law or the integrity of the FBI or a higher loyalty?
Higher loyalty. Yeah.
That when he said that last week, it was obvious. Oh, I thought the case is a lot stronger than I thought. He's lying.
He's lying.
He's lying. He's a political hack, what he's always been.
Yep.
And that's why he really didn't get a lot of coverage on it.
No,
He was on The View and everything else was.
It's again, there are no real legal experts on the left that are on the as panelists on these liberal networks. You don't see them making the case. You know, it's they're having to make it up, just like Alvin Bragg is doing.
866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by FPPF Fuel Power Max.
Independents with carrier authority should be mindful that negotiation strength varies as the week progresses. Typically, the highest rates across major segments are paid for loads negotiated on Sundays, and the highest volume of loads for all segments is seen on Mondays. Also, the weekday that tends to be the best for flatbed negotiations, yielding the best rates. Owner-operators tend to have less negotiation strength on Tuesday, which shows the lowest weekday spread between brokers' offered rates and actual paid rates. Broker offers tend to rise by Wednesday as the end of the week is in sight. This day also seems optimal for the 3 o'clock hustle, so called for its reliance on that afternoon time of day, when brokers are getting nervous, to improve negotiation strength. Stay mindful of this system to maximize your revenue. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more details on this and many other topics. Brought to you by Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara. What I found interesting is here you have the possibility of the first time ever in the history of the country a president being convicted of a crime. You know, whether it's bogus or not doesn't matter.
Right.
And I did not see an obsession about it at all. Not that it wasn't brought up, but there were so many other topics that were out there as if, no, it's just Trump and this is happening. It's not going to be a big thing.
Yeah, it really is that. I mean,
it's amazing.
That's kind of been, but it's where we are. It's I don't like that guy. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It will matter eventually if we allow this to continue.
Oh, yeah.
This is going to be something that affects our entire society forever if we don't stop this. If they get away with this, then any of them, including your political enemy, can get away with anything. That's the end of it. I mean, there's no way, there's no turning back from that. I suspect that, again, Mershon's not going to make the right call later this morning or later today, whenever it's going to be. But I also suspect, I hope and pray, that if he's found guilty, if Trump is found guilty, then in appeals, it's going to be burned to the ground and tossed out. But we'll see. This is just pure insanity.
We have a line open. 1-866-90-RED-EYE. Red Eye Radio.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. A number of people dying over the last few days since we were last on together.
Yeah.
Morgan Spurlock, remember him?
Yeah. That was. I wasn't aware that he was battling cancer. Kind of young. That whole supersize me thing was a big deal back in the day. Then he was at CNN where he had the show for a short time. And
don't remember.
I think it was like a weekend show or something like that. But he passed away. Bill Walton.
Yeah, Bill Walton. What a career! But you know what for me, and again, basketball was my sport. It's what my nephew played. My great nephew currently plays it, and when him being a color person for basketball, what I always loved about Bill Walton and at times when he was young, he was. I thought it was tough to tolerate him at times. But I think as he got older, and especially as a color person for NBA broadcast, he really brought what I loved about Bill Walton's broadcasting style is he brought the happiness that basketball gave him and talked about the joy. And one of the things, not just looking back at his career at UCLA or the Portland Trailblazers where he won, but you see him later on in his career when he played with Boston, played with the Celtics, and he was the sixth man. He didn't start.
Yeah.
And him talking about that team and Larry Bird and the joy that he had. Remember, he wasn't a starter on that team. And joy that he radiated always stayed with me, and I always, whether it was my nephew or my great nephew, I said, "You ever see Bill Walton and the joy? That's what you want to get to.
That smile,
You want it because that's what you remember.
Yeah.
The joy of it. If you ever want to just die laughing, just go on YouTube and put NBA players talk about Larry Bird. Mm-hmm. And Walton's one of them, but it's like across the board. You'll see all these interviews of Bird's trash talking and the joy of all of these ex-NBA players.
Yeah.
There you've got a bunch of NBA players around, and one of them says, "So Larry Bird comes up to me." It was Barkley. Barkley goes, Bird comes up to me and says, "You're not respecting me here." "What do you mean I'm not respecting you?"
Yeah.
"You're not respecting me here." "We respect you." "No, you're not." "What do you mean? How are we not respecting you? You got the white guy on me."
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. and then just everybody just but that kind of joy that you see from players in that. I'm just giving you an example because it's hilarious to watch those YouTube videos. But then Bill Walton himself just taught the joy that he had, the excitement, the nostalgia that he had was just. He was able to express that emotion, which I think makes a great over-the-top sports color person when you can do that.
That's what you want. You want that type of personality doing color, and that's probably what I remember most about Bill Walton. His older brother played for the Cowboys for a couple of years. Wasn't a starter, but they were the only brother to play in both a Super Bowl and an NBA championship. His brother played for the Cowboys when they lost to the Super Bowl 10, lost to the Steelers. And, of course, we know Bill's story. His son, Luke, assistant coach currently in Cleveland, and played in the NBA for a while. They had a record of their own. They were the first father and son to play on championship teams in the NBA. Not at the same time, obviously, but and I don't think they're the only ones now, but they were the first. So an very interesting legacy. Huge, 6'11". I mean, I know all the NBA players are huge, but I mean, it still boggles my mind. If you ever are standing next to a person that is that tall, I mean, just under 7 feet tall, that's huge. That's massive.
And then I remember the one game where it was for the national championship where Walton went 11 for 11 from the floor.
Yeah,
hit every shot.
Wow.
And that I remember as, a young person watching that and going, whoa, what a performance that was. But for me, really, it was where he just, not that he didn't stand out. I mean, he's in the NBA top, I think, 50 and 75, whatever. Mm-hmm. He averaged 13 points a game. But to me, and it's a college superstar without question. But for me, where I really, really enjoyed Bill Walton was as a color person.
Yeah, for me, that's where all the memories are.
He just was so good. I appreciate people that are great storytellers. That I'm in this business. You get jaded and you look at people and you go, okay, they're not that great. They're not that great. And so when somebody just impresses you through the roof, it's a very, very special moment where you, that guy's really, really good. Because when you stop, one of the things you do when you're in this business is you analyze the formatics of everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just listening to enjoy.
Right. Yeah.
And so when you get caught and you're not analyzing anymore, when you're in this business, you're not analyzing what they're doing.
Yeah. You're listening.
You're just listening and enjoying it, and you catch yourself. You just go, whoa, all right, that's greatness, because I wasn't at work. And when I was in management in radio, I was manager of people that did play-by-play and color. So I was always analyzing. That's where that came from for me. Mm-hmm. I was analyzing what they were doing. Mm-hmm. Now, luckily, everybody I hired was always great.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
that I ever hired in the business as broadcasters.
I think of our friend Brian Estridge over at TCU. I mean, these are people that can do the people that can do play-by-play in sports. They have two brains. They can their mind is just, to me, it's just amazing to listen to. We man, I think of all the people that over the years that I've listened to, and Walton was one of those in terms of color, doing color for a game was amazing. So two things came to mind when over the weekend when the news broke that he had passed. Number one, the years of his color commentary, and number two, the beard. That he wore in his younger years as a player.
You mentioned Brian. Yeah. Chuck Cooperstein.
I was about to say Chuck Cooperstein with the Mavs. Yeah.
And now that they're doing so great in the playoffs, but at one game away from sweeping and going to the finals, I'm very happy. I was happy I'll never forget when Coop when he got when he got the play-by-play for the Mavericks.
Yeah.
Because I knew him when things were tough.
Right.
For him. And
Yeah,
we golfed
yeah.
a few times, and it
Yeah.
was always enjoyable. And because he used to work for our station, our flagship station.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
So when he got that gig with the Mavericks, which is now, this is his 19th year doing it.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's been a long time.
And he's really good at what he does. I mean, he's really good at what he does.
His mind is a computer. He can recall. It's unbelievable what he can recall. If you've only known him as his time with the Mavericks, then you don't know everything about Coop, because he can. It really is. Like, if you go up and ask him a question about sports, and you could, any sport, and seemingly it's like he's a human Google. You could ask him a question, and he's going to spit out the answer. He's just brilliant.
I've been blessed to know a lot of great play-by-play people. John Murphy, who just retired from being the play-by-play guy for the Buffalo Bills because he had a stroke a year and a half ago. That to me was just devastating. He had worked for me doing college basketball and minor league baseball back about 34, 35 years ago.
Yeah.
Early in his career, just a great guy, great play-by-play guy too. And so you get an appreciation for. I've always been a fan of great play-by-play guys. Now, my two favorites. One was hockey, the other was basketball. And for basketball, I've always loved Johnny, the late Johnny Most from the Boston Celtics. I just love, because he had that gravelly voice.
Yeah, right.
Bird steals the ball. Bird steals. I mean, I just love Marv Albert, because I was a fan of the '69 New York Knicks.
Yes.
Which was just wonderful. Mm-hmm. Van Miller, the original voice of the Buffalo Bills from way back then, that I just love. And of course, if you ever heard his play-by-play, it just he could make a face-off sound like it's the end of the world. Was the late Rick Jeanneret from the Buffalo Sabres? That the guys at BAP used to play him. When they would play, they go, all right, listen to the Buffalo guy, because he would go crazy.
Yeah.
I actually like sort of the screamers, that really get excited, that because it's sports and it should be exciting.
Well, and it makes, they're part of the team.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about that too. It's just it feels like they're really part of the team. A friend of mine is the in-house guy at the Stars and also at the Cowboy Stadium, and Jeff is one of those guys where he loves what he does. You know what I mean? He's not broadcasting on the air, but he loves what he does, and it's part of getting the crowd going or whatever, and doing whatever promotion they're doing. And I've known him for 30 years, and I know that he's just. Man, he just feels happy doing what he's doing.
Great friend of our show from Kansas City, Arrowhead Stadium, Dale Carter.
Yeah.
Who credits our show for him doing a podcast now. Just so
yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Dale's a great guy, even though it's Kansas City. And when you're a Bills fan, that's
we
tough
forgive
to say,
him.
No, he's just a he's a great great guy. But getting back to Bill Walton, I mean, the color. He just was. He had an excitement and an energy level doing that always made you smile, and I love that.
Well, it's the difference between because there are a lot of former athletes that clearly know what they're seeing and can describe it to you, but how creative and passionate are they is the question, and you had no question about it when it came to Bill Walton doing color commentary. None. And the play-by-play, again, is, often on games, it's again, like I said about Brian Estridge, he's got two brains. This guy's got it. It's unbelievable listening to him do his job. Chuck Cooperstein, same thing. But when you're doing color commentary, it's a very different thing, and you're analyzing, but you also have to find a creative way to deliver that, and those that do it well stand above and beyond.
Right.
I mean, they become legend at what they do.
And a color guy may be different because in a football play, the color guy will come in and every play they'll analyze.
Right.
It's not the same for a color guy in the NBA.
No.
It's like you don't hear them as often, but when they cut in,
Right.
it's got to be good.
It's
always got to be
gotta
good.
deliver because the game is so quick paced. There's really not room for them like there is in football, or other sports. But they've got to deliver every time. He definitely did every time.
86690 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. A new study out. The amount of copper needed for EVs is impossible for mining companies to produce. We'll get to that story.
We've been saying this for a while.
Yes.
We don't. It's impossible to come up with all the materials that would be necessary. We've never, in fact, ramped up to the extent that we would need to ramp up to make all of these mandates happen. It's literally impossible. There's no way to get it done. And we've already gotten past the point. We knew it was going to happen, but environmentalists are already screaming, net zero is not zero, EVs aren't the answer, and everything else. So expect more legislation even after the EV mandates if they hold.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across the USA and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Here we are. Hope you had a great Memorial Day weekend. Did you see, where was it, Talib and, was it Omar, put out tweets on Memorial Day and got it wrong?
Yeah.
They didn't know.
Not shocking.
They didn't know what Memorial Day was about.
No.
And then they deleted their tweets later on. We'll get to that coming up. But we were talking about the death of Bill Walton, also another professional athlete. This was just devastating because it happened in my county, in Tarrant County. They had the PGA golf tournament going on, the Charles Schwab tournament in Fort Worth, and it just was. When I first heard it, I was like, you got to be kidding me, because I was in Florida by the time I heard this. But you had Grayson Murray, who won the Hawaii tournament this year, the Sony Open. Felt sick after the second round, or he wasn't done with the second round, withdrew after the 16th hole, and in some time period between then and Saturday committed suicide.
Wow.
And just, it's interesting because you have people saying, well, look at the warning signs, and you got to make sure that, we have better mental health and everything else. He had gotten all the help you could possibly get. One thing that I've learned about suicide, and I don't want to say, because I learned something from it. I don't know if it would have made any difference, but I had two people close to me, or one acquaintance and somebody who was closer to me commit suicide. Nobody saw it coming. Either one.
Yeah.
You didn't see it. And the one woman I'm talking about, the one that actually sat in on our show one time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget it. I had known her because she was an intern at our radio station. Just a great young woman. And we knew her when she was in college, and she was, involved in the radio station. I mean, energetic. She wanted to learn everything she possibly could about the radio business, and then moved up in the radio business after she was an intern.
Yeah.
To a quite important position in in another radio company.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget. It was around Thanksgiving, and I got the message, from her. That was like a 10-minute long message, and it was just, look, I'm thinking of changing, the job that I have here. I'm looking for a letter of recommendation, reference, whatever. Here's what I'm thinking, and then she went on and on and on, and she said, well, you know something. Don't call me back because, as you can tell here, by the way that I'm talking, I'm not sure what I want to do. And she said, let me get back to you here in a couple of weeks. After Thanksgiving and everything else, I'll get back to you in a couple of weeks. And I listened to the message, and I said, okay, she seemed quite determined to get back to her in a couple of weeks. She wasn't sure. She wasn't ready to discuss or, ask me the questions she wanted to ask. Within 10 days, she committed suicide.
Mm.
And one thing about it is, if anybody calls me who's a friend of mine, I always return the call now, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
I don't blame myself, of course. I don't know if it would make any difference. But what I found out from suicide, from the people that I know and doing as much research on it, and you and I have had this talk before, that it doesn't matter what you do. They feel there's something in their mind that tells them, no matter how much you tell them you love them or whatever, because he had a very loving family, a fiance, and everything else, they just believe that the world is better with them gone.
Yeah.
And
that's hard if you've never had that thought. For most of us, it's hard to imagine that thought, but that's exactly where they are at the point of suicide. They believe they are doing, they believe it will benefit their loved ones. They believe it will benefit the world, that the world would be a better place without them. And that is never the case. It's never true.
Well, I think any of us can look at our own lives and say, and if you're in a terrible situation, and you're like, how do I get out of this? And you're lost completely. If that thought ever runs through your head, which it has not, thank God for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I know the first thing is, suck it up. You can't do that to your family. That would be the first thought. You cannot do that to your family. It's, I wouldn't attempt to justify it in my mind and most people's mind, saying, well, it's justifiable. You'd say, no, it would destroy these people. It's not a victimless crime.
Right.
And so that may help some, but when you get to that point where that doesn't matter, even if people tell you, I'd be devastated if you were gone, you say, no, they're just saying that. It'd be much better if I was gone. They would live a much better life if I was gone. It's thinking that I don't understand and I don't know, because he was getting professional help on it. He also had, an alcohol problem that he admitted. I think he was 6 to 9 months sober when he won his golf tournament, because that was talked about after he won it, that he had been sober. And I watched that celebration, with him. And so to hear that, it's devastating. But I will say this, after all of, what I have experienced, I don't know what the answer is. I don't know.
This is the helpless feeling in the wake of such an event. Whether you actually know the person, if they're directly connected to you or not, when it happens, it is that helplessness for that feeling of helplessness for the survivors, because we've all dealt with people close to us who have passed away unexpectedly, and whatever the nature of that passing, we often go through the stages of grief, which include, is there anything I could have done? Someone close to me died in an accident, and I thought to myself, it's one of those things. Well, if they had left 10 minutes earlier or 10 minutes later, or all these things, which is it's one of the stages of grief. And then the things too of, if I had just done something, maybe there's something I could have done. It's especially present with parents who have lost children.
Mm-hmm.
And because as a parent, even as they become adults, I have one child in her 40s now, and I think to myself every day, they're still my babies, they're still my kids, and so you feel that level of responsibility. And if something happens to them, then you question that. You go through that stage of wanting to believe that maybe there's something you could have done that would have prevented it. And with suicide, it is especially devastating because you then, and maybe only then, and maybe even for the first time, understand their level of suffering in the end. And it is a suffering. Many people want to believe, or I guess many people maybe don't consider fully everything that an individual who is eventually is suicidal or maybe eventually commits suicide, what their daily considerations are. They're, again, in this case, seemingly on the outside, and it looked like everything was going in the right direction. And it really all starts, I guess, with a conversation. For those individuals who have had those thoughts or maybe have attempted suicide, it starts with a conversation, and then that conversation must keep going. Because I think and I don't have any answers, but I think if there is a way to find answers, it's going to be through those conversations. And I think keeping those individuals engaged in the conversation to let them know of their tremendous worth to this world, to their families. Those things, they have to happen. There's so much discussion also on brain chemistry and what happens there. And then alcohol, drugs, and things that change that brain chemistry. Those are the things, too, that I look at, that there are some people seemingly that can go through life and have a beer or two along the way, and they don't seem to be affected by it. But there are others that, as it gets more and more involved, that brain chemistry starts to change. Your body chemistry changes, and there's no way that it's not going to have a negative effect on that brain chemistry. And so those are the things that are most difficult to stop and correct permanently. But it must be done. All those things must be done. But I think for those of us who are kind of on the outside of all this looking in, we scramble for answers.
I'm reading here from the New York Post, and I remember seeing this interview following the Sony Open where he announced that he was 8 months sober. Mm-hmm. And he talked about it afterwards, the struggles, the mental health issues he's had, the depression issues he had. And he also, as they write here, he also gushed how good life had been treating him amid his career resurgence, saying, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I have a beautiful fiance. I have beautiful parents. I have beautiful nephews and siblings. Everyone in my life right now is close to me who has been through the struggles with me. It's all a team effort. I'm not sitting here alone, but all of them are part of this. And so you hear that, and you just, when I saw that in January, I said, okay, here is a guy on his way back. And so when you hear the news that he committed suicide over the weekend after the second round of the Charles Schwab golf tournament that was held in Fort Worth, Texas, it hits you hard, especially when you've experienced suicide. And the other one, the other guy was more of an acquaintance. He was the husband of a woman who was a real good friend of a very old girlfriend, and we had gone out 30 years ago to see a show. Everybody, I still knew them and hung out with them, and myself and my buddy afterwards. The show was over, went back to their house, and the women were in one room talking. We were in the other room and had a great conversation, just the three of us, for a couple of hours, and it was great, just a great conversation. That was like a Saturday night. Next Saturday morning, I remember I was at work, and the other friend that was sitting at the table called me up and said, "Remember last week?" And well, yeah, he committed suicide in a pickup truck, put a shotgun in his mouth, pulled the trigger. You just don't. It just blow. Now that person I didn't know as well as the other person, but it was still shocking. It still was really, 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 shocking when it happens. And that's the thing. You look at it and you go, "What is the answer?" I think it was on YouTube. You ever go through YouTube? They have the obituaries.
No, I've never seen them on YouTube, but
all the celebrities every year.
Celebrity,
celebrity.
Okay,
And it was one of them came up. It was YouTube celebrity suicides, and so I said, "Wow, I wonder how many. That's interesting. I wonder how many celebrities." And I went Googled it. Unbelievable the number of people that are rich beyond your wildest dreams. Doesn't have anything to do whether you have money or not, or whether you don't have money.
Well, it's one of those things where fame is fleeting, and that's especially true, where 1 minute you're doing so great and everyone is adoring you for your work, and then the next minute you're out of work, and it comes and goes, and then you are dealing with your family and personal life and everything else that everybody else deals with. And I could see where the ups and downs, that kind of roller coaster life would be, if not kept in check, would be very difficult emotionally.
It has to be pure hell if you've got depression and suicide thoughts. And it's not something that's just fleeting that comes up once in a great while when the thought comes through, but where you're obsessed with it day in and day out.
Yeah.
Where you need counseling every day and people around you every day. That's suffering.
Yeah, it is.
That's torture.
Yeah.
That's, to me, that would be hell on earth if you were to ask me that definition.
I wouldn't want that for anybody.
No.
And, if there is anybody out there listening who has been dealing with anything, please start a conversation. Reach out for help, because it is available, and you do absolutely have that worth.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. All right, so it was Ilhan Omar, Representative Omar, and Cori Bush, who deleted the Memorial Day tweets after revealing we don't know what Memorial Day is about. Ilhan Omar: on Memorial Day, we honor the heroic men and women who served our country. We owe them more than our gratitude. They have more than earned access to quality mental health services, job opportunities, housing assistance, and the benefits that they were promised.
That would be Veterans Day.
Yes. Cori Bush: on Memorial Day and every day, we honor our veterans in St. Louis. We must invest in universal health care, affordable housing, comprehensive mental health services. Apparently, the talking points were out for the squad.
Yeah.
Both deleted them. Both posts were deleted later on.
Not shocking. It isn't shocking that there's it's just now about agenda. It has nothing to, if you don't care about the basic principles of this nation, if you don't care about how the nation was founded, really. When you talk about the Declaration of Independence, you talked about the series John Adams and how when and it's only a Hollywood depiction, but it probably is pretty accurate when they made the decision. And the somber looks on faces, knowing they had just signed their death warrant.
Yeah, that's the one thing that that's the one, and I always post that on Independence Day. Because we do the fireworks and we celebrate and everything else, but when you're in that moment, and that's the one thing I did like about the HBO miniseries, when you sit there and you say, all right, this is it, Declaration of Independence, we're no longer part of your country.
Right.
You're not smiling at that point. At that point, you realize, as they did, that they had signed their own death warrants if they lost or were caught.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Memorial Day goes back to the very beginning. And, of course, these types of lawmakers aren't really interested in the foundation of this nation.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara. You ready for another commencement speech?
Sure. Yeah. Always.
Here's Ken Burns.
Oh, man.
Baseball, Civil War,
yeah,
all that stuff. His commencement address at Brandeis University. You ready?
All right.
Here we go.
Which brings me to a moment I've dreaded and forces me to suspend my long-standing attempt at neutrality. There is no real choice this November. There is only the perpetuation, however flawed and feeble you might perceive it, of our fragile 249-year-old experiment, or the entropy that will engulf and destroy us if we take the other route. When, as Mercy Otis Warren would say, the checks of conscience are thrown aside and a deformed picture of the soul is revealed. The presumptive Republican nominee is the opioid of all opioids, an easy cure for what some believe is the solution to our myriad pains and problems, when in fact, with him you end up re-enslaved with an even bigger problem, a worse affliction and addiction, a bigger delusion, James Baldwin would say, the author and finisher of our national existence, our national suicide, as Mr. Lincoln prophesies. Do not be seduced by easy equalization. There is nothing equal about this equation. We are at an existential crossroads in our political and civic lives. This is a choice that could not be clearer.
So now I'm questioning whether Babe Ruth actually existed.
Yeah.
What doesn't he do there? He doesn't give you one instance of what Trump has promoted that will end up with America being re-enslaved.
Right. There's nothing clearly that he lays out.
Right. And he's great at giving quotes of famous people that have nothing to do with the topic, because when they made those quotes, they weren't talking about Trump. He's using quotes from other people instead of telling you what he thinks and why he thinks it.
Yeah.
It is the ultimate of elite rhetoric.
Yeah.
And never explaining the specifics of what got him to that point, which is what liberals do.
Yeah, it's built with things. It's his version of a word salad. Right? It's built with things that don't apply.
Right. No, you're great.
Because
point.
In order for them to apply, you must apply them for your audience. Here's, I describe these things of what would happen. Here's why. The why is the application to all of it.
Well, off the top of my head, because I didn't even think about this. Why wouldn't I vote? Why is Biden unacceptable? All right. Am I going to sit there and quote, well, Abraham Lincoln at one time said men can do bad things, and that's why Joe Biden cannot be president. No, I'll tell you why Joe Biden can't be president again. Number one, the border.
Mm-hmm.
We should not have an open border. The reason I can't vote for libertarians, can't have an open border. There's nothing wrong with having sovereignty and allowing, people to come in legally and having a process to have people come in legally to the country. Number two, the spending, the out of control government spending, which is causing now, we're seeing the consequences of it, the inflation that it's causing, and it's going to cause a lot more problems down the line because of the interest on the debt. The president lying consistently about foreign policy. The president lying about lying about what the generals told him to do in Afghanistan. The anti-Semitism that he continues to support, the pro-terrorism, the pro-terrorist narrative that comes from the administration, that comes from the president. Identity politics. The president, for example, doing it again a couple of weeks ago on the Georgia election law, lying about the Georgia election law, doing what white Aryan Nation and KKK leaders have done in the past, which is lie about something in order to create racial hatred. What we see in the Democratic Party and liberalism overall, when it comes to what they have done to the bureaucracies, what they have done, the fact that what we see with the Bragg case, what we see, the rot, James Comey brought that back to our attention a week ago, the rot in the FBI, the rot in the Department of Justice, the two-tier system of justice which is going on here, the banana republic that's been created that they wish to have under President Biden. If you look at liberalism overall, that he supports, the fact that he supports judges being activist judges and not abiding by the law. So that's just a couple of things there but I've named out specifics.
Without writing a speech, by the way.
Without writing, no speech in front of me, nothing, just...
We're at a critical crossroads to the young minds who sit before me today, and we must make a decision as a nation, as a society, what we're going to accept. And for far too long, the American left, the left all over the world, has built something based on racism, based on bigotry, based on the things that we fought to end. They look to keep that going, knowing if they can build the fear in minds, then they can control those same minds. We have a commander-in-chief that capitalizes on it at every opportunity. in the botched exit of Afghanistan, he lied to the American people, including the Americans who lived in Afghanistan at that time, and told them everything would be fine and the Taliban wouldn't be taken over. And they did take over, and now it is, and we have proof of this, a terrorism superstate. And God only knows what's being planned against America. And when you combine that with the ability of Iran to fund their proxies over and over again by allowing them to participate unnecessarily in the global marketplace on oil, it's to the tune of tens of billions of dollars, and all of their proxies, including Hamas, are funded to carry out their mission of eliminating Israel and eventually eliminating Western society altogether. And that includes the very soil that we stand on. Americans are underwater when it comes to their budgets, and that has to do with the spending and the lack of foresight as to what that spending is going to, and the ignorance, the all-out ignoring, even when advised by their own side as to what it's going to lead to. And you go to the grocery store, you go to buy anything, pay for anything these days, and you see that massive effect. Go look at your receipts from 2019 and look at your receipts from 2024 and tell me that's not true. And on top of that, our enemies don't fear us, and all of our allies don't trust us.
You will see, for example, when someone like Ken Burns, because he did it right there, is telling you that there's only one choice in an election, but won't tell you why. He won't tell you why.
He uses these keywords of fear.
Right, but he won't tell you. We'll tell you precisely why you can't vote for Biden. Right. And at the same time, we'll tell you what we don't like on the issues about Trump.
Right.
And then you get to decide what's worse. We view it and say, it's not even a toss-up. It's not even close.
Not even close.
You can look at, and we'll get to this here coming up following the top of the hour. We never got to this last week. Jonathan Turley talked about it, had an article over the weekend on it. The laptop is real. The Department of Justice under Biden is now saying the laptop is absolutely real. Any suggestions of Russian disinformation, which have been peddled by the Bidens, the media, former intelligence officials, nothing more than, quote, a conspiracy theory. The laptop was real. He attempted, not just attempted, he successfully pushed the Biden and the people underneath him, pushed that narrative in order to censor the media.
Yep. To censor you.
To censor you, to censor the media.
Well, while he wasn't in office at the time that the FBI was approaching Facebook, he wasn't in office yet. It's still, again, the rot that we talk about at the FBI, the rot we talk about in the intel community, in the upper echelon. It's the same mindset and toward the same end.
Well, no, and you had, it was his national security advisor. Mm-hmm. He is his national security advisor that was his campaign person, was key in pushing the intelligence officials. So it didn't really matter whether he was president or not. He continued to push it after he was president. But when he wasn't president, he was pushing that narrative on a consistent basis, even in the debates. And he knew it was a lie.
Yep.
They all knew it was a lie that they were promoting. And you had censoring that you have taken liberal Democrats like Barry Weiss, Michael Schellenberger, Matt Taibbi, and more that have completely reversed what they thought about Democrats and Biden based on the wanting to censor from the public news, government censoring.
Yep.
That's why.
Yep.
Ken Burns can't do that. Ken Burns is a coward because Ken Burns will not give the specifics of why he says Trump is going to re-enslave us.
And here's the bigger miss, too. The one difference is this is not 2016 in a time where Trump has never been president, and liberals can build that fear in people's minds based on things that haven't happened yet. Trump has already been president. Mr. Burns, tell us what he did as president. Tell us what Trump did that put him, in your opinion, in this category as you describe him.
Right. He's a blowhard.
Exactly.
That's what he is.
Exactly.
That's all he is.
Exactly.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Coming up on the top of the hour, this was a story last week, and again, we live in the bubble of today, so even though the story was out there, it didn't get major news, and it should have. The laptop is real. Now the Biden administration admits a laptop is real, so everything that you heard about Russia disinformation or, well, somebody could have hacked into it, or nope, the Department of Justice says no. So now everybody across the board agrees the laptop was real. And so we need to go through the history of the lies that you were told by the media over and over and over and over again, and even by the White House and Joe Biden. So it's important that we get to that. Also coming up, you and I said this, it seems like for a couple of weeks, the media has put the Biden administration on the defensive. It's noticeable, actually. And it happened on the Sunday morning news shows with Pete Buttigieg talking about EVs.
Yeah.
And we'll play that coming up. Plus, a new study out there, the amount of copper that is needed for EVs is impossible now for the mining companies to produce and in the future.
We talked about, someone else had done the overall broader picture of all of the materials it would take and the level at which we would need to ramp up production of those materials from where we are. And it is absolutely impossible. It's never happened in history. There is no innovation that would allow for it at this point. You and I look at horizontal drilling and what that did for production in oil. And that was a huge boom because it was such an efficient process for that industry. There is no innovation here that gets us to the point of that kind of mining. And the question would be, you and I heard from the people who talked about peak oil for the longest time. What about all the peak copper or peak anything that is going to be required if everything's going to go to EVs? Yeah.
Well, we know it's not.
It's not. You can't get there, and that's the whole point.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across the USA and around the world, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning.
Hello.
I just love this headline. This is from CNBC. Some employers are reluctant to hire college graduates who attended pro-Palestinian protests, survey finds. The class of 2024 have graduated into a rocky jobs market, and to make matters worse, employers are becoming increasingly wary about hiring them. In fact, 64% of employers have said they have become concerned about hiring graduates in the past 5 years more broadly, according to a recent published survey of 1,268 business leaders in the U.S. by higher education publication Intelligent.com. Almost a third of employers are particularly worried about hiring recent graduates who have attended pro-Palestinian protests in the last 6 months, while 22% are reluctant to hire graduates who participated in these demonstrations. Students at high-profile universities have gotten involved, including Columbia University, University of Virginia, University of Michigan, University of Mississippi, among others. Almost two-thirds of employers say they are reluctant to hire protesters because they may exhibit confrontational behavior in the workplace, and over half say it's because they are too political and could make other workers feel uncomfortable, per the survey. Other reasons include that they perceive protesters as liabilities, dangerous, lacking a decent education, and having political beliefs that were far different from their own. With all the dramatic coverage from recent campus protests and other events, it's understandable that employers may want to avoid potential distractions and conflicts in the workplace.
Yeah, you think?
Said the Chief Education and Career Development Advisor at Intelligent.com told CNBC.
All right, so look, something that's been a concern or consideration for companies from the beginning is that you need to hire people that get your mission statement, that understand what the company is trying to do, what the goal is, what you do, what you produce, what service you provide. And you want to find the people that are most passionate about it. That's kind of at the top end. That's what you really hope to achieve. But at the very least, you want to find people who are trainable, who understand, and then, of course, they're incentivized by, getting a paycheck, all that. And when you bring in people who have another agenda, they're not there primarily to work. They believe in their mind they exist for something different. Then you are going to create, there is no way it won't create chaos. It's going to eventually get to a point where that person, because that person is out to serve themselves, not the company and its customers.
Well, what I'd say is the far left, I'll make it very blunt, the far left don't care about making money. Business is only in existence for making money. If you're pro-Hamas and pro-terrorist, capitalism is not a priority on your list. And every company in America, whether you want to believe it or not, Democrats, is about making a profit. And if they're not, like the pizza guy, they go out of business. We're talking the pizza guy that, remember, he said he's going to drastically raise minimum wage, and then he had to stop serving lunch because expenses were so great. And finally,
close at lunch.
Yeah, they closed at lunch, and then finally they shut down. And he said he still did the right thing.
Yeah, even though he was
right
out of business and they were out of jobs.
Right. And he shut down the business because of labor cost, and said he still did the right thing. That the business shouldn't exist, even though all of his employees were not slaves.
Yeah.
They voluntarily took the jobs, were all out of jobs.
Yeah, and, look, you get it. You understand it. We all do. The question is, what do these companies do if they have mistakenly hired someone who is a protester? Because you may not get that out of them during the job interview. Then all of a sudden they show up and they're an activist, and they decorate their cubicle as such. And it's, instead of pictures of their kids, they have, signs that say things like silence is violence. And all of these things, I don't know what a company does to weed them out after the fact. But I think that employers now, managers who are interviewing, are going to be a lot more aware during that process. The one question, look, it's been, it's been since the 80s since I've been on a job interview. That's interesting. So 1980s, not 1880s. And the old question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I don't know, 5 years older. All of these questions that were there's this psychology of the interview process, and you're trying to determine how motivated this person is and everything else. But now it's not just how motivated they are, but what motivates them, what they believe their goal is, what they believe their purpose in life is. And it's one thing to say, well, I volunteer on the weekends, or I do this and I do that. But long before the interview now, they've seen your social media page. They've seen pictures you posted and comments you've made. And it's very common for that to occur.
And the other thing is, what's his name? Oh, not Mr. No. What do they call him? Oh, he's been on the financial analyst, Kevin. Oh, I can't think of his name. He's the one that's talking about the fact that if you're a part of these protests, you're done, especially if you wish a high-profile job on Wall Street or anything, because AI will that now
right.
You have they have a picture of you when you come in. There are now organizations where they can put that picture in and they can identify you at any protest.
Yeah. Right.
Kevin O'Leary.
Yeah.
Kevin O'Leary said that. He said, you're dead, because that's where everybody's going. That's how they're going to fact check you. It's not the same because these resources all exist. It's like your credit rating. They're going to check your credit rating.
Well, they actually have services now that and the credit rating thing has been going on for a long, long time, but now they have services that do all of it in one service, where they're doing basically it's like a super background check. It's not just whether or not you've ever committed a crime. It's not just your tendency for financial responsibility or just the opposite with your credit score. It is about who you are as an individual. And the algorithms now that they've developed to get that information and bring it all to one collection to a source, and then have that source give it to the employer, it's developing even further every single day. So they know completely what type of person you are, at least what type of person you want the world to think you are through social media comments and anything else that's out there about you. There's just no way around that. And I don't know where you land. I have no idea where you land. It's interesting that we look at where we are, and it's kind of a conundrum that we have, where the birth rate is super low in the U.S. Wall Street Journal just did a piece on it a couple of weeks ago. And it has been dropping in recent years, and we're at the point that it is critical. We do not have enough people to sustain an economy that needs that kind of expansion. You and I have talked about this for a long time. So you've got to bring in people. And right now, we're not willing, as a nation, politically, you can't have that conversation. First, everybody wants the border closed, and then we can talk about visas, work visas, and people coming here to work. But we are at a point now where, yeah, you need people, but you're going to have the right people.
I'm reading this so-called, human resources expert that CNBC talked to. Political views should never be factored into a candidate's qualification during the hiring process. Not only is it unethical, but there is no meaningful bearing on the ability of a candidate to perform the responsibilities of the job based on their politics. Sure there is.
Yeah, there is, and it would be an exception to that rule if it weren't the case for one individual. Look, there are a few people that I know that are liberals, and we've never sat and talked about how far. I know they're not radicals, but it doesn't. The point is that you may not. There may be a few out there. There may be some where it doesn't carry over to their work. You don't know. You would never expect them to act as a radical on the job and everything else. But the problem with it, and I touched on this, I think it was last week, where we start with this, well, there needs to be, you're intolerant. And then from going to, well, you're intolerant to, you don't like our cause. Well, now we want you to be a part of the cause. And then silence is violence. And, all of this, one thing leads to another. So if you talk about someone's political view, then there has to be consideration as to how far someone would take that based on everything right now being thrown at Donald Trump.
You and I talked about, for CNBC, for example, that for years you and I shake our heads going, this is the bastion of capitalism. And you've got socialist economists that are trying to analyze what's going on in the capitalist stock market. And you and I have always got the biggest kick out of that.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, I'm hiring some person to work at my bank. All right? Mm-hmm. They're going to be a banker, loans, and everything. And they are publicly, in the media on a consistent basis and protesting, and they're anti-capitalist. Capitalism sucks. The big banks are a problem. I'm hiring you to my big bank. You've said big banks are a problem. Mm-hmm. I don't need the headache that might come with that. There's nothing unethical about it, as this so-called expert said.
Right.
We're about capitalism. You're against capitalism. You're not the prime candidate I want.
Right. No, I mean, and even if you're not a bank, if you're a company that does a lot of business with banks or relies, even if it's not your business per se, but you're relying heavily on big banks, and you look at that and say, well, this is going to be a problem. Because what do we see on the campuses? We don't want this university doing business with. We don't want any support for.
Right.
We don't. And any degree of separation, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be the university. They're not protesting at the University of Israel. It's not on the sign out front of the school. They don't want any association with it. And it's never, by the way, it's never thorough and never genuine. It's always disingenuous, in fact, because we think of Occupy Wall Street. We don't like the big banks. We want down with the big banks. And then where do you guys have a bank account? One of the big banks, because we haven't been able to find a small bank.
Yeah, we haven't been able to find a small bank that can service us, so we went to the big bank, even though we're against big banks. Well, no, you're not. You used a big bank. Yeah, but we're still against them, but you use it. Well, we're using them to further our effort to get rid of them.
Right. And that's a problem. If you've got somebody in front of you and you know that there's any potential of something like that working against, even if they did it quietly, working against the ultimate mission statement of your company, you can't hire them.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on compliance, safety, accountability. Compliance, Safety, Accountability, or CSA, is the FMCSA Safety Compliance and Enforcement Program. Its goal is to hold motor carriers and drivers accountable for highway safety and to reduce crashes, injuries, and fatalities on our roads. CSA does this by assessing the safety performance of motor carriers and drivers based on data collected during roadside inspections, crash reports, and FMCSA investigations. Based on the data that is compiled, motor carriers are assigned a score. The carrier is then grouped with other carriers who have had a similar number of safety events. Carrier scores within the group are then ranked to determine intervention priority. Low scores are better, so carriers with the highest scores are those that are most likely to be targeted for intervention by the FMCSA. Interventions range in severity and may include warning letters, roadside, off-site, or on-site inspections, civil penalties, or operation out-of-service orders. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller and Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. You know, the thing is, when you look at the job situation right now, you don't have a huge labor market. And so you've got companies that are really, 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 really picky. You know, because there's a limited number of people that come in, and at the same time they look and they say, okay, with technology, AI is coming in. And so they want people who can produce. And this is something that you and I have talked about. With the increase in productivity of businesses with AI, there's going to be an expectation of an increase in productivity with people who come to work there. Mm-hmm. You know, we've talked about quiet quitting. What is it? What's the new one? Bragging. I can't think of the name of it. Something brag. What is it? I'll find it here in a little bit. The new, they call it. It's where you talk about the fact that you've been working. It's
busy bragging.
Busy bragging, right? It's basically George Costanza in the episode where.
I was going to tell you what it was earlier, but I was too busy.
Yeah, exactly. You're. I'm just so busy.
Yeah,
I
was doing a lot.
I don't
of
have time to do the show. I don't have time.
I was really busy.
But it is a George Costanza where, remember, if I look irritated, everybody will leave me alone, because if I look irritated, people think I'm busy. Like, okay, I've got this going on here. I'm just, oh, you're busy? Yes, of course. That's why. It's the pressure.
See, that's what I do when I walk through a room full of my grandkids. I just look irritated. That way they won't ask me for money.
And so you're looking for that person who's a self-starter, who you believe this person can be productive. They understand the bottom line. And the bottom line right now is to find ways to make money.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the market that we're in right now, with inflation and everything else, it's how can we increase efficiency and productivity?
Yep.
Well, I hate Jews and I'm pro-Hamas. You might not be the person I'm looking for to make money for my company.
About to trigger somebody right now. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley on Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. We never got to this last week. There are just so many things, but the laptop is real.
It's real.
The laptop is real. Now, we've known it. You've known it for the longest time.
Mm-hmm.
But the Justice Department denounces claims of Russian disinformation as a Biden conspiracy theory. The defendant's laptop is real. This is from Jonathan Turley, who is a Democrat. With those words and pictures like this one of Biden using crack, the Justice Department introduced the Hunter Biden laptop as evidence of his upcoming trial over federal gun violations. The federal prosecutor went on to denounce suggestions of Russia disinformation, long peddled by the Bidens, the media, former intelligence officials, let me add Adam Schiff and Goldman, Representative Goldman, as nothing more than a conspiracy theory. Goldman did it just a couple of months ago. He was talking about he was talking about, well, we don't know. I mean, the Russians could have gotten to it. It might have been hunters,
right.
and the Russians got it. No. The media eagerly spread the claim of Russian disinformation before the presidential election. Twitter and others suppressed the story. This was done through one of the most skillful disinformation campaigns in history. Mm-hmm. As we said, the people that are screaming disinformation are the ones responsible for the most disinformation.
Well, the Biden campaign, it was announced over the weekend, is going to be relying on Bill and Hillary Clinton for fundraising. By the way, their first big fundraising dinner is going to be at the Kremlin this coming weekend.
It later came out that associates of the Biden campaign, including, I said before, I threw out, I said, wasn't it the National Security Director? No, it was Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Pushed a long effort to get the former intelligence officials to sign the letter making the claim, knowing that an ever-accommodating media would accept the claim without question or further inquiry. Mm-hmm. At the same time, some of us wrote that the laptop was self-authenticating since many of the emails were confirmed by third parties and other evidence. Exactly what we had said at the time. Uh-huh. The Justice Department last week made the same claim that Red Eye Radio and others have made of self-authentication, as well as independent investigation by federal investigators. In the now debunked letter of former intelligence officials just before the election, figures such as Leon Panetta, former CIA director in the Obama administration, claimed that the letter had all the markings of a Russian disinformation effort by intelligence services. Panetta continued to make that assertion late last year in pushing what the federal government is now calling a conspiracy theory. Mm-hmm. Then he goes to the Washington Post. Washington Post, Philip Bump, and others also continued to push the conspiracy theory. Indeed, in 2021, when media organizations were finally admitting that the laptop was authentic, Bump was still declaring that it was a conspiracy theory, despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Bump continued to suggest that the laptop was seeded by Russian intelligence. What is equally astonishing is that in 2023, the Post stood behind Bump's reporting on the laptop and other debunked claims, even after the government declared this reporting as part of a conspiracy theory. The Post continues to support the false reporting by Bump and others. Democracy dies at the Post. The laptop includes not just pictures of Hunter using drugs, but brandishing a handgun. The court clearly agrees with the government on the authenticity of the laptop. It has ruled against the defense and will allow it to be introduced into evidence. Despite the conclusions of American intelligence, media, and others, the Biden team continued to push the disinformation. That led the Justice Department to tell the court that the defendants, quote, the defendants' theory about the laptop is that the laptop is a conspiracy theory with no supporting evidence. It added that Hunter's laptop is real. That's a quote. Mm-hmm. It will be introduced as a trial exhibit, and it contains significant evidence of the defendant's guilt. The response of the media has been a collective shrug. Worse yet, many of these same political and media figures continue to support censorship and government regulations of disinformation, while the government is now acknowledging that they carried off one of the most successful disinformation campaigns in American political history. And we had said this, that the people that are claiming that things need to be censored because of disinformation are the biggest liars out there, and that's the Obama administration.
Well, I heard a stand-up comedian do this, and it's pretty interesting because a friend of mine used to joke about whether or not you could get away with this, right? And this would be like, for anybody who's had teenagers, it would be, the teenager comes in and he comes in late. Hey, where you been? You're late. Just out doing drugs, drinking alcohol. Good night. Just kind of nonchalantly. And when they've actually been doing drugs and drinking alcohol, they just kind of just admit it, but act like you're kind of tongue in cheek. Mm-hmm. Well, the left has been using this approach, with the whole Russian thing. Well, it's the Russians. And it was them. It was the Hillary campaign. It was the Democrats who were doing this. So it's kind of the same approach. Oh, look, they're using the Russians. Aren't you using the Russians? No, but they are. And they have all of that power. And my gosh, it started at, we talk about the Zuckerberg appearance on Rogan, which is where he basically first came out and said, yeah, the FBI came to us. And this was in the summer of 2020 on the whole laptop thing. Well, this is going to be misinformation. And this is the rot in the upper echelon at the FBI. Same individuals, quite possibly, that were certainly the same mindset that was linked to the whole Russian hoax thing. And you just carry it on. And in your mind, because all of us who are old enough to remember the Cold War, it sounds like the big bad Russians. And by the way, the big bad Russians are still the big bad Russians. So it becomes for them an easy sell, right? Putin is former top KGB, not a good guy. You can create the monster easily and also from a distance.
Take everything. You just mentioned Russia collusion. Russia collusion was disinformation paid for and created by the Hillary campaign and supported fully by the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
They knew by the time they had the meeting in early January, remember Biden was a part of it and Comey was a part of it, they knew that they knew they couldn't verify at all the dossier. By the time the Mueller investigation began, they knew it was bogus.
Oh, yeah.
And then by the time that Comey actually started doing interviews in April of 21, when he said, maybe the P-tape and the prostitution thing, I can't tell you that it didn't happen. Mm-hmm. He knew it didn't happen. Mm-hmm. Understand that all, and remember, then he wrote the book, A Higher Loyalty.
Yeah.
A higher liety.
Yeah, exactly.
Is what it should be, because that's what he did.
A higher loyalty to the Russians.
And so when but you look at that, you look at this here with the laptop. Another major these are major stories that went on for years that was and we're being told that, remember, that the Democrats are for censoring because of disinformation. Yet they are the biggest, there is no biggest purveyor of disinformation right now in the United States than the Biden administration.
Yeah.
So you look at that, and then the next thing you go to? The testimony from the assistant to Fauci last week.
Oh, yeah.
All the disinformation, they lied. They all lied. Fauci lied. We knew he lied. We said he lied way back then. Mm-hmm. In fact, Rand Paul was putting out a couple weeks on social media, got to put him in jail, got to put him in jail. I think it's the New York Post. I'll see if I can find their editorial that they wrote in the last couple of days saying, people have got to pay for this. They lied to the American public. Remember, everything about questioning, think about this, everything about COVID that they were wrong on and knew that they were wrong on or didn't know whether it was the truth or not, they kept peddling, and if you disagreed with it, you were promoting disinformation. So on COVID, Russia collusion, the laptop.
Yeah.
We can go to Afghanistan. We can go to Israel. The biggest blowhards of disinformation are the people that are trying to censor the truth.
Yeah.
Because that's what they're doing.
Yep.
They wish to censor the truth.
Yep.
In Russia collusion, they wish to censor the truth. The laptop, they wish to censor the truth. Afghanistan, they wish to censor the truth. Israel against Hamas, they wish to censor the truth. All across the board, they're looking to do it. And by the way, they wanted to continue. This was just 3 weeks ago. The Biden administration was forced to shut down the partisan panel of intelligence experts that feature multiple signatories of the discredited Hunter Biden laptop story. This from May 6th. I'm reading it from National Review. The Department of Homeland Security agreed last week to dissolve its Homeland Intelligence Experts Group that you knew they were going to promote.
Yeah.
Our intelligence group says that these are all the experts after the conservative legal group America First Legal filed a lawsuit arguing it was in violation of federal law. The experts group will be wound down within 30 days of the entry of the order. It will not hold any future meetings, and the department will not reconstitute the experts group inconsistent with the Homeland Security Act of 2002. The department will also provide the experts group meeting agenda and meeting minutes with participant identifying information redacted within 15 days of the entry of the order. Read a joint notice of stipulation and dismissal filed in Washington, D.C. District Court last week. The lawsuit filed with former Trump official Richard Grenell accused the Department of Homeland Security of violating the Federal Advisory Committee Act because of the experts panel's partisan imbalance. Congressional Republicans also pushed DHS to disband the panel because of its partisan imbalance. A whopping 98% of the group's political contributions have gone to Democrats, 1% to Republicans, the AFL noted in its lawsuit. The Federal Advisory Committee Act is meant to prevent government agencies from forming advisory panels lacking in objectivity. That's exactly, they wanted to take what they used for the disinformation of the laptop and make it an official group of the CIA that they could relate to use and push disinformation against Republicans.
Yep.
They had to disband it. They were breaking the law. They didn't care. They thought they could get away with it. They've been so cocky in believing they can manipulate what they believe are the idiots who vote for them, that they believe they can do anything until the lawsuits are filed. And obviously it's against the law with what they are doing.
Right.
Just amazing. 866-90-RED-EYE.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
Earn personalized savings on commercial truck insurance with Smart Haul from Progressive. Learn more at progressivecommercial.com. Not available in all states or situations.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. By the way, on that panel, that the lawsuit forced the CIA to stop with the experts panel. Of course, Brennan and Clapper were on it. We had talked about that a couple of months ago when we saw that they had been put on that executives panel, which has now been disbanded by the CIA because of the lawsuit.
Yeah.
But it's important to understand that all the major stories that we have gone through over the last couple of years, that the Biden administration has said they wish to fight disinformation or censor disinformation, that they were the party that was actually creating the disinformation.
Yep.
Let's put it this way. They were lying and wanted to shut the truth up from you.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.